actually, Iran is zero threat to the United States of America. They do not have nuclear weapons. They do not have the capability to hit America if they did have those nuclear weapons. And the idea of launching a war of choice, a war of aggression, because you say they chant mean things, and what if we didn't do anything and then something bad happens? I just think you're nowhere near the realm of like a just war.
Because your position has been very interesting on the Middle East. It's mainly been that you've been, could I characterize it as being kind of pro-Palestinian in your outlook, in the way that you see it, or would you put it another way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say pro-Palestinian. I mean, I'm not like, I don't even know exactly what that means. Like, I'm not saying like I'm against what's been done to them. I would be against that being done to, I think, just about any group of people. So no, I don't think I'm pro-Palestinian. I think I'm pro-American. But I'm certainly a critic of Israel's destruction of Gaza.
So what is it in particular? Did you feel that it was disproportionate, the violence, or I should put it another way, the Israeli response to October 7th? Did you feel that was disproportionate? Was there another way that it should have been done?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of other ways that it could have been done, and certainly it was disproportionate. But I think it's horrible, and I think that it's that America shouldn't be involved in it. I think it does nothing but cause a headache for our country. And you can see that all over the place. Like, even if you're for the war, you kind of can't deny that, like, this has caused major turmoil here. It was a major problem for the Democrats politically. It's a major problem for Donald Trump politically right now. It is not good for, as it says in the preamble to the Constitution, it is not good for domestic tranquility at the very least. But also, yeah, I don't believe that we should be involved in like this horrific, I don't even think you can call it a war, the destruction of a captive people.
Because there's a lot of people who would say, and I'm sympathetic to this, which is you have Iran, which are essentially funding terror cells right the way through the Middle East, Hezbollah, Hamas, amongst others, which are effectively destabilizing the region. There's a lot of Muslim Arabic countries who despise Iran because they see them as an existential threat to their existence, which they are. They're Islamist in nature. So by that, you would argue that unless you deal with the threat of Hamas, unless you deal with the threat of Hezbollah, you are essentially going to have a Middle East which is more unstable, which is going to become a hotbed of terrorism, which eventually is going to impact the safety of nations around the Middle East, but also in the West and in the United States.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of people who are arguing if we don't take this group out or that group out, it's going to lead to instability in the Middle East. And every single time we go to make that move, it leads to more instability in the Middle East. And I flat out reject the idea that Iran is an existential threat to any of those Sunni states in the region. Like Saudi Arabia, who are we talking about? Jordan, Egypt? Like
UAE? I mean, if you speak to people in those countries...
Yeah, I'm sure they're concerned about them.
They're very concerned.
Yes, of course. And there's a Sunni Shiite beef that's been going on for many, many years. And there's a lot, but the idea that like the U.S. sock puppet states over there are really threatened by Iran, I just don't think is right.
They do feel that.
Yeah, okay, fine. But like, I don't think they're right about that. I don't think Iran is taking over Saudi Arabia. Like, what do you mean existential threat here? They're going to take out one of these countries? Well, unlikely.
Take out is, I mean, countries don't tend to take each other out, but go to war, they're fighting over interest. Like, they are a threat.
They're fighting over interests. I think that's more correct. But I also think that there's an interesting thing where when you go like all the like Shiite terrorist groups, or I guess Hamas is whatever. But if you're talking about Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, like the people who Iran has been in business with, and I think of those groups, Hezbollah the most, you know what I mean? Like there's real direct connections and training and stuff there. It's a little bit different with the Houthis and with Hamas. But again, those weren't the enemies of the American people. You know, when we go back to 9/11, and it's been really fascinating how like the war on terror just like totally shifted over to being this whole other group that has nothing to do with knocking our towers down or attacking the Pentagon or any of that. Our beef was always with the Sunni radicals, and the Sunni radicals are actually at war with a lot of those groups that you're talking about. So we've weirdly also done this thing now where we've picked sides, which I would say, I think has a lot more to do with security concerns for Israel than it does for the United States of America. But now we're on the side of Al-Qaeda in Syria. We're on the side of Al-Qaeda. We were in Libya. We're on the side of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. And so like No, I actually don't think that's good for if you look over the last 15 years, the people who were destabilizing the regions the most were the bin Ladenite head choppers. I mean, that was really the major problem that we had there. And so fighting on those guys' side in all of these conflicts, I don't think has done anything.
Well, the Sunnis have changed, right? The Saudi regime, the UAE regime, they are very not extremist. The Saudis used to spread extremism throughout Europe. They're not doing it now, the people in charge, right? So the extremists and the terrorists are mostly now being funded and spread by Iran, I think is France's point.
Yeah, okay, but even that, I mean, I don't know that that's exactly right. I mean, I think you're probably right in your characterization of Saudi Arabia's evolution and the UAE. But at the same time, I mean, look, again, we all agree on this, but to go, what was the huge mistake here that Iran has all this influence in the region? It was the Iraq War. It was the dumbest thing they ever did, is that these neocons were convinced. You know, I was watching the other day, because David Wormser did this interview that was kind of like responding to me, which is just weird and surreal feeling, because it's the weird world that we're all in now. But he's like talking about, he's still arguing that, like, no, if the Hashemites had taken over in Iraq, then the Shiites would have had to listen to them, and then Iran would have had to be nice, or Hezbollah would have had to be nice to Israel. But the obvious truth, which was predicted by many people in real time, was that obviously we had a dual containment strategy in the 90s, right? Obviously, if you took out Saddam Hussein, it was going to hand the region to the Shiites, who were much closer allied with Iran, and that was going to increase their influence in the region. So again, this is all George W. Bush and Barack Obama's fault. And yeah, that being said, I don't think that means that we should go into the next war to try to, push the balance back in the other direction.
I think the danger was, Dave, is that with Iran, when they use rhetoric like we want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth, you know that they are funding terror cells. There is the suspicion that they've got nuclear weapons. If you say those types of words and let's say you don't get involved and something awful happens, that's going to destabilize the world, whatever. Whatever happens, that's going to start a war.
Well, I don't think anyone's speculating that Iran has nuclear weapons. I don't think there's any.
Well, they're on the point of maybe getting nuclear weapons, which is why the strike happened.
I guess I think that look, they chant mean things is not good, but that's also not a justification for a war. Or it's nowhere even approaching a justification for a war. And I do think...
But it goes beyond chanting mean things, Dave.
Okay, but that is what you brought up. So I'm saying, like, look, I think when people look at these things, like, in the same way that if you were looking at a trial, you don't just look at what the prosecution says, you look at what the defense says also. Even if it's a really, really bad person, you still look at what the defense says as well. If you talk to people, I've talked to several Iranians about this, but if you ask Iran, why do they hate America? Why do they hate America? What do you think the most common answers are? Like what? Because it's very clear. There's two that are really big that come up all the time. And it's not the same reasons why the bin Ladenites hated us. It's kind of different things. But the two big beefs they have is that we overthrew their government in 1953 and imposed the Shah on them. And the other one is that we backed Saddam Hussein when he did the worst thing he's ever done, which was launch the war, the Iraq-Iran war. He killed 500,000 Iranians and used chemical weapons and all types of horrible things. Yes, they chant mean things about us. We could also look at the rhetoric out of DC and out of Tel Aviv. Not too friendly toward Iran either. We put them on the axis of evil after 9/11, invaded and destroyed the two countries that touched them, right? Iraq and Afghanistan. And they were on the axis. Now, so it's just kind of weird to hear Americans or Brits talk about their rhetoric and what a threat they are to the Western world. It's like, hey, there's been a lot. John McCain was singing bomb, bomb, bomb Iran when he was running for president. Hillary Clinton, you talk about threatening to wipe them off the map. What were her exact words, if you remember? It was something, when she had to overcompensate being like a woman running for president. And I forget her exact words, but it was something we will totally eradicate, totally decimate Iran, or all of these things.
Well, the question was, if Iran were to launch a nuclear attack on Israel, what would our response be? And I want the Iranians to know that if I'm the president, we will attack Iran. Whatever stage of development they might be in their nuclear weapons program in the next 10 years, during which they might foolishly consider launching an attack on Israel, we would be able to totally obliterate them. That's a terrible thing to say, But those people who run Iran need to understand that, because that perhaps will deter them from doing something that would be reckless, foolish, and tragic.
And we actually have the might to do it. And we've attacked them. They haven't attacked us. So again, I would just say that zooming out to the bigger picture, yes, Iran funds groups that are a pain in the ass to Israel. That is certainly true. And there's a big...
It's more than a pain in the arse, Dave. Let's be fair.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that was a
October
euphemism,
the 7th,
obviously, yes.
Yeah, but October the 7th is more than a pain in the arse.
Okay, fine. But I'm saying Iran has historically funded Hamas, Hezbollah, the
Yes,
Houthis. They've sold arms. And it's like, okay. But like, actually, Iran is zero threat to the United States of America. They do not have nuclear weapons. They do not have the capability to hit America if they did have those nuclear weapons. And the idea of launching a war of choice, a war of aggression, because you say they chant mean things, and what if we didn't do anything and then something bad happens? I just think you're nowhere near the realm of like a just war.
No, I totally agree with, but that isn't remotely what's happened here. No one's launched a war on Iran, a preemptive war on Iran.
Israel and the U.S. just did. They call it the 12-day war.
So what happened is, and this is, I think it's useful to come back to October 7th. October 7th happened, and then it became very clear that Iran has been funding the organizations that have been attacking Israel this entire time. Now, you may agree or disagree about Israel being an ally, should be an ally or not of the United States, but Israel is an ally of the United States. So to the extent that, and we had Yossi Cohen, the former director of Mossad, on the show to talk about the nuclear secrets they stole from Iran, which then they gave to the United Nations and everybody else to see for themselves. I mean, it's very clear Iran would like to have a nuclear weapon. And by the way, when we asked Yossi why do they want one, he said because it allows them to project power in the region, which is why anyone wants a nuclear weapon, right? I
think also the deterrent. And it's not even clear to me that they wanted a nuclear weapon. And forgive me, I'm not taking Mossad's word for it that they do. It seems
it's not taking their word; it's the documents they stole.
Well, sure, but they were very clearly So after 9/11, right? Bush puts the axis of evil of Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. Okay, so North Korea races to get a nuke. They get nuclear weapons. We've left them alone ever since. Saddam Hussein, in 2002, tells the UN, I'll allow inspections regimes to come in, kind of waving the white flag, where the Gaddafi later does the same thing. We'll get rid of our chemical weapons program, we'll get rid of our nuclear program, all of this. We go in and topple both of those guys, and they get killed publicly. Iran goes the middle, So like, North Korea developed nuclear weapons, those other countries got rid of all their weapons. Iran went, hey, we're going to hang out here. We're going to let the world know that we've mastered the fuel cycle. We can break out and get a weapon if we want to, but we're not doing that yet. A kind of standoff of like, don't attack us because we could make a nuke, but, we don't want to make it. But, this kind of this vague game. But it's a latent deterrent. That's the idea here. And then they can negotiate from there. And that's where they were sitting down to negotiate, like what level of enriched uranium they would be at. So essentially, I guess the point is that it's hard to then look at them and go, this is very suspicious that you haven't gotten rid of your entire nuclear program. It's like, well, the last guys who got rid of their nuclear program ended up sodomized to death in front of an angry crowd of people, and the country that got nukes gets left alone.
I totally agree with that, which is one of the reasons I actually believe that if the US and Europe doesn't help Ukraine have a peaceful solution that works, you're going to have loads of other countries pursuing nuclear weapons. Because if no one else is going to protect you, you might as well get a nuke. Like if Ukraine had nukes, it wouldn't have been invaded, right?
Yeah, probably not.
This is why one of my concerns about allowing these things to get out of hand is actually it helps nuclear proliferation.